Something is awakening inside of Black women, a quiet but undeniable knowing that we're meant for more than survival, more than sacrifice, more than endurance, more than carrying everyone else's expectations while putting our own dreams on hold. A realization that the life we've been taught to accept may not be the life we're meant to live, and that there may be more freedom, more peace, more joy, and more possibility available to us than we've ever imagined. Because once you realize you have options, everything changes. Close your eyes and imagine living a life you love, unapologetic and unbothered, free from daily microaggressions from Karens and Kens, free from the fear of police brutality and systemic racism. Wouldn't that feel amazing? Now open your eyes. What if I told you that it's possible? Hear inspiring stories and get the actual blueprints from brothers and sisters of the diaspora who are living out their wildest dreams abroad. You've heard the term, now be inspired by the movement. I'm Krishan Wright, and this is Blaxit Global. Y'all, I am excited for this episode of the Blaxit Global Podcast. I have the chance to reunite, even though I see her all the time, with one of our Blaxit Global Passport members. For those of you who have listened to the journey, you know when I moved to Portugal, I did not entirely move alone. There was a big cohort of members from Blaxit Global that we all moved around the same time, and my next guest is one of them. So I am delighted to welcome Nicole Barrett, who is joining us today from Seixal, Portugal. Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, girl, hey. Let's hear it for the Blaxit Global Fall 2023 movers.
We represented well. We came in hot.
Yes, we did. We're like summer, fall, and it was definitely hot, but we did come in hot. And what a great move that was.
Oh my gosh, that was so transformative. And I feel like it helped make our transitions here much smoother because we were all helping each other and all like at the same journey step. So
I agree. And also like a built-in community, right? So I feel like even though I had been coming to Portugal on and off for several years, I felt like when I landed, I had family, right? A chosen family that I had gotten to know. They weren't people that I met when I came here. It was a handful, like an intentional handful of people who were family and friends, and we were figuring stuff out together. And I really loved it. I loved it. So thanks for that, John.
Yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. And so we'll definitely revisit that journey step, but you know, you listen to the show and you know how I always like to start at people's origin stories because I believe that the origin story reveals so much about where that person is in their life later on. And so I know you are originally from Jamaica. And so tell us about your beginning.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the grounds, the yadi. As you say, I'm originally from Jamaica, born and bred actually. Both my parents were Jamaican, split when I was young. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, thereabouts. I grew up in St. Anne, the parish of St. Anne, the beautiful coastal views. You know, Jamaica is absolutely gorgeous. And my origin story is always interesting for me to talk about because I always say that Portugal is the only place that I chose to live. And the reason being is, you know, growing up as a Jamaican, as a Caribbean person, and many of you could probably relate to like a third world country or a country where you aspire to go abroad. In Jamaica, we call that foreign. You aspire to go to foreign. And my dad moved when I was about 6 or 7, and he moved to the United States, to Boston specifically. So I grew up in Jamaica with my mom, an extended family. You know, my mom had, 14 siblings. So cousins, aunts, uncles. You know, I always say that my mom ended up building from a 2-bedroom house she ended up building an 8-bedroom house. So she went from 2 bedrooms when she bought it to an 8-bedroom, 2 kitchens, 3 or 4 bathrooms, like kind of house. And she had 3 of us, and I never ended up having my own bedroom because of all the aunts and uncles and cousins and people who were just around, that big family that you absolutely just enjoy being with and cooking with and laughing with. And I have this great memory of sitting under, the almond tree on this bench that my uncle built, right? And we would just laugh and talk and eat mangoes. And it was a really beautiful childhood. I mean, not short of some challenges, but it was a beautiful childhood. And so when I was, after I graduated high school, and in Jamaica, you start high school young. So I was about 15 or 16 when I finished high school, and I moved to the United States to live with my dad, because that's what you do. You aspire to move to foreign, to move abroad. And it was just a natural step. Like, I knew from a very young age that's what would happen, right? So it's a next natural step. So I went to live in Boston with my dad. My dad and I, even though he moved away when I was pretty young, we were super close, super, super, super close. Went to college in the United States, Rhode Island first, Johnson & Wales for a year. And then I went to Drexel University in the United States. And my last year in college, my mom passed away at 47 years old from complications of diabetes. She was still in Jamaica at that time. But yeah, growing up in Jamaica I think about it fondly. There are lots of stories. I don't know if it's a choice that I would have made for myself to move abroad, but it's a choice that my parents made at that time.
There's so much there, like you said, that aspiring to foreign. When you made that first transition abroad, which wasn't necessarily your choice, but just something that people aspire to do, how did you feel coming from Jamaica, where everybody around you looks like you, you know the lay of the land, it's beautiful, it's Caribbean, it's warm, it's everything, to being in Boston and then Rhode Island, where not everybody looks like you, not everybody sounds like you. Like, how was that transition period?
And of course, Massachusetts at that time was coming off of, this was the mid 90s. So it was 10 years, or 10 years before that was the 1980s, when it was a big, rioting, racial situation going on with busing in the Boston area, or Metro Boston area, and the state as a whole. So it was still, for me, I didn't feel a lot of racism or being different at the very beginning, but then you start to pick up on little things, coming from a country where, like you said, the majority of people look like me. But I will say that a lot of people don't know that about 25% of Jamaica's population are white or descendants of white people, even some Jewish people, even some Portuguese people, actually. They mainly live in like the town area, so like the Kingston area. I say that because even though I was the majority, even the quote unquote lighter shaded white people in Jamaica don't think of themselves as white for the most part. They're Jamaicans first, right? So in Jamaica, it's not so much difference in color, it's a difference in class, difference in education, some colorism here and there, but so I came from a country where I was a person first, right? I felt like a person first. And so when I arrived in the US, seeing everyone, not looking like me immediately was not a big issue for me, because, I had this chip on my shoulder. Like when I walk into a room, people always say I walk with my head like high up in the air, like I'm a person first. So it wasn't an immediate change or difference that I felt, but as the years went on, it's something that I could really, 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 really feel. It wasn't a big difference in the beginning, but I caught on pretty quickly, and I started to notice little things that made me go, okay, maybe I am different, right? But I don't think it really changed. I mean, I think it's more like a personality thing, and a don't give a damn thing, I would say.
No, it's great perspective, because as you built your life in the States, and we'll fast forward a little bit, you spent a lot of time in your career, your corporate career, before you transitioned to being an entrepreneur. And I would imagine that you having that ability to lead first as a person, less
Right.
about the exterior perception of who you are,
Right.
served you well because you had that as your lived experience before you transitioned to the US.
Yeah, I agree. And I will also point out, we're being very honest and very vulnerable here. I will say, this is a topic that I bring up quite a bit among some of my, in my circle, among some of my friends, the big difference between African American and a Black person coming into the United States. And you hear this a lot from like Africans or Caribbean people. And there's a difference, if we're honest. And you and I have talked about this before. There's a huge difference between the way we look at living in the United States and what we came for. Like, we came for a mission, right? I came to have a better life. My parents have made sacrifices. So I have my blinders on, right? And also, too, going back to coming from a country where I was the majority and walk into a room like I have a chip on my shoulder, I would get into a lot of discussions with my African-American friends. And I used to be like, well, like, what? I don't understand this. And they wouldn't understand me on certain racial topics because and we don't want to turn this into that, but for me, that part was a struggle in trying to understand where they're coming from, and they are trying to understand where I'm coming from. But yeah, I did bring a lot of that mentality in the sense that I do not care. I came here for a reason, for a purpose. I have blinders on, and I made it work for me in my career and my life.
Yeah, and that's different from like, I don't even know what all the terms are now, like foundational Black Americans, who, our ancestors didn't come here by choice. And
Right.
So we've been, born into the system and trying to navigate it. There are some obvious discrepancies and differences of our respective lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, we will experience in the States, right? Racism and discrimination in various forms. I think it's just the way you either interpret it or internalize those situations are the differences.
Right. I will tell you one very grounding fact, though. What I had to realize was, it took me several different occasions to realize this, but I came very quickly to understand that no matter where I was from, it doesn't matter. People just treated me the way that they see me, right, in the US. So I became very sensitive to the African American experience and very sensitive to the culture and the history. And even though, coming from the Caribbean, where we weren't brought there by choice either, right? The history is different. The control is different. The taking back of control was a little bit different. We went through our own struggles, and even though we were, being raised different countries, right? We still have the same skin color. We're still looked at the same way. And so I became very sensitive very quickly to that experience.
We'll be right back.
Building a life overseas is about more than just choosing a country. It's about choosing yourself. That's why I created our newest guide, 7 Questions Every Black Woman Should Ask Herself Before Building a Life Overseas. Get your free copy through the link in this episode or visit blaxitglobal.com. Colonialism has still had a grip on so many countries and so many cultures, especially as the U.S. navigates, call him Darth Vader 2.0. It's really important to ground yourself in the fact that we see the differences that we have within us and celebrate them. But when it comes to the other folk, you just black.
And guess what? And I experienced my first racist comment. I believe I was about 19. 19 or 20, maybe 20 or 21. Later than that, I was in a parking lot at a mall. And I think I may have parked too close to this lady's car, this lighter shaded lady's car. And she did not like that. And a bunch of us piled out of the car. And this was in a very, mostly white community. And she looked at me and said, "Go back to where you came from." Yeah. And that was my first run-in with racism, my very first. And so again, it came to me at a later life, and I was appalled. Like, what's we sometimes it takes me a while to kind of figure out what's going on in different situations. I think it was by the time I walked into the mall, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
This is because I had never experienced it,
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Yeah, because I think with not every, but any racist encounter, there is a moment of disbelief. Like,
Yeah.
it, did did they say what I thought they said? Like, did they do?
Right.
And
Exactly.
what happens is regardless of frequency, right? Is after a while, and I've talked about this on the Blaxit Global YouTube channel with Dr. Kimani. There's a term of the weathering that happens with Black people in the United States, that over time, the compound effects of these, racist encounters, discrimination, over policing, microaggressions, all of that has these bad influences on our bodies, right? Physically, psychologically, socially, it shows up in different ways. And so for many people, when I think with the pandemic served as a big catalyst for us to start to examine, like, why are these structures still in place that support systemic racism? And then two, like, okay, how do we extricate ourselves, those of us that choose this life or want to choose or pursue this life? And so for you, you spent quite a bit of time of your career in tourism
Yeah.
and things like that. So what was it that brought you to that point of your life that I think ultimately led you here?
I have this quote in my high school yearbook, which when I think back at it, I cringe now, right? I cringe because, growing up as a little girl in the country, and I grew up on a more or less my family farm, with the goats and the pigs and all the plants in the back. And in high school, I hated high school, by the way. I went to an all-girl boarding school. And I didn't do too well in high school, I have to say, because I was super shy. And I think I didn't really think much of myself at that time. And so I think in my high school yearbook, I think I said I wanted to be a receptionist. Hello, bar. Hello, low bar. And listen, if you want to aspire to be a receptionist, go ahead and be the best receptionist that you can
Exactly.
absolutely be. But I didn't, for me, it was just the bar. I thought that was a very high
Yeah.
bar, and
You were playing small,
I
is
was
what I get from that
playing
statement.
very small, very small. And I think it was my environment. I don't think, the school was the best choice for me. Right. I made some great friendships there, but it was just not the best choice for me. And so by the time I had started college, I had this newfound confidence. I'm going to be, WTF. I'm going to go gung ho. And so I've always had a tourism personality, right? Even though I was shy in the beginning, I consider myself a very hospitable person. I love to host. I like to make people feel comfortable, whether it's at home or out in the street, because you never know what you're going to say to someone that could make their day, make their life, change their mind about where they're going, what they're doing, and how they treat other people. And it's always been a core value of mine. When I moved to the US, I didn't go to college immediately. I worked my dad had a mechanic shop. So I worked in his office for a little while. I worked in a fish store for a while. I worked at a museum in Boston for a while. And then I finally went off to college and I decided to study hospitality. Even then, I thought I was going to work in a hotel, maybe, I don't know, front desk or something. Through college, I worked in different hotels, bed and breakfasts, big hotels, etc. Until I found out that there was a sales portion of hospitality. So you can go into hotel sales. And that's how I ended up getting a job right out of college to work for Fairmont Hotels. But before that, I had done the Disney College Program, which was the best year of my life. Loved it. And Disney prepared me a lot for the stage, I will say, because for those of you who have worked at Disney, when you come there's some underground tunnels. That when you come out from the tunnel to go up, up to the main parts of the parks, and the tunnels are for the staff, right? And so when you come out, before you go on stage, or before you go out, or before you come out of any staff door, there's a sign that says, smile, you're on stage, right? Or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it says. So that prepared me a lot to be in a career in hospitality. I went straight from that to working for Fairmont Hotels and then Starwood Hotels in sales positions. And then I ended my corporate career after 13 years working for regional director of sales and marketing. So because of that, that allowed me to travel not just to the Caribbean. And then I absolutely, absolutely loved it. Loved it. I think, if I had to go back and say, people always ask me, well, what would you do if you went back? And I probably do something like journalism, right? Or I would still be in a role where I'm telling stories, I'm hearing stories, I'm talking to people, making people feel comfortable. Yeah, I absolutely loved it.
So what brought you to a point where, like you say, you took a step back and you said, okay, I'm done with the corporate career and it's time for the pivot. Pivot was like a big word for 2020, with everything that happened. And as I was listening to you tell your story, I hear certain pivot points, right? Where you could have gone down the road of being a receptionist, but yet and still, when you thought about going into tourism hospitality, there was some front end. So, little threads of these through lines. And so as you started to think about your next move, what was the impetus for that transition from a career in corporate to then entrepreneurship?
Just to kind of give you a timeline, I ended my corporate career in 2018, but the thought came to me in 2013. And the reason being, my dad and I, as I told you, were very close. He was the absolute love of my life. And in 2013, he passed away from cancer. That really threw me for a loop. And I was traveling a lot up until his death. And then I was in the Bahamas when they said he didn't have long to live. So I flew home from a team meeting, like in the middle of my team meeting. And I was at bedside for a few days before he passed away. I had an issue getting an expense report approved during that time. And granted, like I said, I was traveling. There was a timeline, a date that you had to submit your expense report by. And I was with my dad until the very end, then went immediately into like funeral planning. And anyway, I missed the deadline for this expense report. And I won't say who said this, but as soon as I called to say, hey, I know I missed the deadline. This is a couple $1,000s or whatever. Is it okay? My dad passed away. And I was told these exact words, Nicole, everyone has problems. Sorry, you missed the deadline. So I said, okay, all right, thank you. Now I know what I have to do, because it's like, I will say this, I loved my job. Absolutely, absolutely loved it. But there was a point where it was just like, I went straight to thinking, okay, I know what my plan is. But then a year later, about the 1-year anniversary of my dad passing away from cancer, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that was 2014. So now I go immediately into surgery, chemo, radiation. It was a whole stretch of a couple of years of trying to be okay. Kind of cut forward a couple of years that, I finally found the strength to be like, okay, I'm going to stand on my own. I got ish to do. Ran the Boston Marathon, did a few other things to prove that I am just like, I'm good. I got this confidence. Now I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do what I need to do. Now in 2018, and I did the genetic testing, to find out if this cancer was meant to be for me, right? Is it in my family? Do I have any genes that says that I should get cancer, et cetera, et cetera? Ended up doing that. And I was told by my doctor that the cancer had spread for about rapidly for 2 years, right? So this is 2012. It started 2014 when they discovered it. And I was told that, no, this is absolutely stress related. So when I went back 2 years, I was diagnosed in August 2014. July of 2012, I got the biggest promotion of my life at work. I was like, okay, all right, now I see. No, I know what I need to do.
Like it couldn't be any clearer. You had a lot of loss, both your parents over time, the weathering that I talked about earlier that happens to Black people in the US, the compounding stress of work, not to mention that person that was like, oh, everybody has problems. Like it's such a minimizing and dehumanizing comment to make.
dehumanizing. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. I felt dehumanized. And at that point, great, status is important, your career is important, money is important, but I can't enjoy any of that if I'm dehumanized, right?
I've done a YouTube video about basically how corporate America does Black people dirty. These comments, these instances that occur, it changes ultimately your perception of not just your employer, but the whole system.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that's, at least, thinking of my own experiences, where it was just like, okay, yeah, I could get another job, right? And not all jobs are that bad, but ultimately the system itself, this is the outcome, this is the output of the system. And where people think it's okay to say these things, people think it's okay to do these things.
Right.
Irrespective of the toll it takes on a person. Nobody's saying you shouldn't advance in your career, but there's a culture that looks at people as widgets and not people. And so to say flippant, dehumanizing things just flies off the cuff because they think it's okay because they can just insert another widget.
Yes, that's it. Another widget. Isn't that something? And I struggle with that because, like I said earlier, I absolutely loved my job. I loved my job. I love the people that I work with. I love the opportunities. I love the benefits. I loved what I did. I loved my team. Having to walk away from that was very, very, very difficult. And it's funny because this is the first time I'm talking about this publicly. I don't think I even gave a reason why I was leaving. I just wrote my resignation, and that's it.
And so then you pivoted into ultimately entrepreneurship.
I did take what I learned at this amazing company with me and kind of use that to do something similar, just not on the scale. So I started out by working with travel agents, travel professionals, by teaching them or working with them on how to grow their businesses through some kind of, travel marketing. So whether that is email marketing, social media marketing, confidence on stage marketing, confidence on videos marketing. So I did a lot of that and I absolutely loved it. And I started that in 2018. It really picked up in 2019. And also through the pandemic years were good for me too.
Maybe an obvious question, right? Like if the good times was rolling, how in the States, like how do you then make that transition or the decision to make a transition to Portugal? Like where did that part come into play? Because like you said, there was a intentional decision to move yourself and your family to Portugal. And so presumably somebody's like, well, if things were all good, right? You had the ownership of your business, commanding of your schedule, clients that you could choose to work with, doing the things that you love, pursuing those passions. Why leave the US? Why leave all of that?
Why? I mean, like I aspired to come to foreign. I am at foreign. Why would I?
Exactly, right? Like if you already got where you would aspire to be, like why leave all that?
So I first came to Portugal in 2017. I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the people, and I was here for a good week and some change, maybe a good week and a half or so. Rented a car, drove around the entire country. Maybe not entire, it felt like the entire country, but I did some miles, north, south, east, west, all the way out to the Spain border, all the way north of Porto. Didn't make it onto the Algarve, but made it pretty close, right? So, and I saw the different terrains, stayed in Lisbon for the most part, but absolutely loved it. And there's this one moment that I was like, this place is special. And I was driving through a very small town north, and I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm not going to say it, but it was northeast, I would say, of Lisbon. And I was lost looking for a place, looking for a restaurant or building or something. And I got out of the car and I was just walking down trying to figure out where the heck I'm going. These are like small towns now. So these are like houses with like, orange trees in the backyard and like a lake in the back. Beautiful scenery, like what it is. And this old man, no word of English, no word of Portuguese, nothing we can say between us except hola. And I looked tired. I probably looked hungry too, because he put up his finger and basically saying, hold on. And he goes and he grabs a little plastic bag and he goes to his little orange trees in the back, picks some oranges, put them in a bag for me, called me to the fence and gives it to me. It was just the most beautiful moment. To this day, it stuck with me. And I was like, I want to feel like this every day. I want this feeling. It's so natural. It's beautiful. It's, it's love is what it is. Love for a place, love for people, love for a feeling, love of oranges, And so that was the moment I realized that I said to myself, this place is special. I don't know what I'm going to do with this feeling yet. I don't know what I'm going to do with this knowledge, but I know it's special. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I could retire here, right? So I'm thinking long term, because who the heck, moves their kids out of school and come to, a foreign country, but it's not for the military or a job. Like, who does that, So I went back home with this in the back of my head, and I came back with my family in 2019. And I said, okay, all right, this feels good as well. Came back several times after that. And between that and 2021, I would come back like occasionally for long periods of time, short periods of time. And I got involved with the Portuguese Tourist Board. And so much, in fact, that I was actually coming on an all-expense paid trip in March of 2020. And we all know what happened then from the Portuguese Tourist Board. And that was canceled, but I was determined to go back at some point. So when they reopened to U.S. visitors in 2021, I came back for the summer with my family. And that's when I engaged, not knowing exactly what's going to happen, not knowing if I was going to do this full-time permanently, but I engaged a realtor at that point and, looked at properties, talked about what the possibilities are. And then I started researching the D7 visa. I didn't even know there was a visa called that. It was just like, okay, how can I move to Portugal, right? I just know at this point, the U.S. is really weighing on me. Mental health is super important to me. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, shortly after that, I started therapy because, it was just a very difficult time. And there were some other things that I needed to reconcile in my life as well. Other things that I was struggling with, I needed to reconcile. And so I started therapy, and I just knew that for me to be healthy, it was just not the environment for me. And that's when I started looking at Portugal officially as a place to move to.
And I would imagine with the encounter with that man and the oranges, it probably made you feel a little bit reminiscent of your time growing up in Jamaica.
Yes. And, I joke about this all the time with a friend of mine who that Portugal is the most, well, let me put this the right way. It is the most Caribbean country in Europe. I mean, from the bureaucracy to their attitude to work, to their attitude to life, to the everything is all right, man. Like, just relax. Calma. Calma, which is Portuguese for calm. Relax.
Yeah.
So
you put now Fajmal and Irie together, right?
Irie, not Fajmal. It is the most. It is the Jamaica of Europe, yeah? And so to your point, the landscape is not similar, but it feels the same. The countryside, to how nice and hospitable people are, to the slow pace of things sometimes, while, to an American in the beginning, it can feel a little frustrating. You kind of, you get used to it. And it does remind me a lot of Jamaica. And I did spend almost 30 years in the United States. And in Jamaica, I don't feel Jamaican enough. In the US, I don't feel American enough. But when I'm here in Portugal, I feel like it doesn't matter. I get to be my true 100% authentic self. And I love that. It fits right with my soul. It sets my soul on fire.
When I had Julie on in the earlier season, and she's born in Jamaica, spent many years in the States, and then moved her family to Italy. And she had a similar sentiment of not feeling Jamaican enough when she goes back home.
Yes.
And not feeling American. but
Yeah.
having that feeling of home, humanity, feeling authentic in Italy. And for someone who is not from there, sometimes you think like, well, how can that person feel that? But it's so interesting that years later, I'm now having this conversation with you,
Yeah.
similar pathways, right? Of the
Yeah.
same ancestry, the same feeling, like the same
Yeah.
description of that feeling.
Exactly. And listen, I'm Jamaican to the core, right? Like nobody can tell me, right? Like I'm a Jamaican, like I feel it in the soul, right? But when I'm dropped in Jamaica, you're reminded, oh no, you're different. They smell it on you, right? Which is fine. Which is fine. But my lived experiences have made me a different person. I'm okay with that. I welcome that, and that's fine. But listen, I'm Jamaican to the core. Nobody can tell me different, right? But and in the US, I wouldn't say I can't even say I'm American to the core. My experience, the majority of my life has been lived in the United States, and yes, I've evolved in that way, or evolved for the better or the worse. I've evolved into that, and I'm kind of like a mishmash of both. But I don't have to think as hard about any of those things when I'm here in Portugal. I can just let it go.
With that, your children, and let me know if I've gotten this correct. I assume the children were born in the US.
Yes.
Okay, so for them, they were born American.
Correct.
Their lived experience has been as Americans, and now they are in Portugal.
Correct.
How has that transition been, either from them either settling in or even broaching the idea of leaving the US and coming to Portugal? Because I would imagine that their journey step is obviously going to be different from yours. And so how is that transition?
If you were to ask my kids if they had seen themselves moving to somewhere else other than the US, they'd be like, oh, absolutely. Have you met my mom? They'd be like, do you know who my mom is? They have been very big and frequent travelers since they were little. I mean, I've gotten them on a plane a couple months into their time on this earth. Before moving here, we had traveled obviously to many different places in the Caribbean. But they had also traveled extensively through Europe. So they'd been to the UK a few times, Germany, Portugal, Spain, Italy. Like we've been a lot of times to Europe and the Caribbean. So they're very good travelers. And they have always been open to new experiences, different ideas, different foods. So I think it was a natural thing for them. Was it a natural next step? Probably not. My eldest, he's 19. His name is Marley, true Jamaican. He, I believe, was more for the move, more so than the little one who's 13, Blake. So they were 12 and 18 when we moved here. But they were both at transitional phases, meaning Marley had just graduated high school. He was 18. So he had to have gone off to college somewhere anyway, right? Or made a transition to some kind of work or next level. Blake was graduating elementary. So he would have gone to a different middle school or gone on to a different school anyway, to middle school. So it was the perfect transition period for us. Like I said, Marley was more for the move, more so than Blake. Blake is very pro-American. Everything American is better, from the Takis to the burgers to, And so for him, it was a little more difficult, or a little more challenging, I should say. And he's in international school now. And the very first year was challenging because the classes were taught half in English, half in Portuguese. And so that was difficult for him, but we've gotten through it. And, we gave him, after the end of the first year, right, he had the option to either go back to that school or go to an online American school. And did some extensive research, gave him the option, and he chose to go back to the school, which I, was absolutely overjoyed for. So he's, we got him tutoring, got him Portuguese lessons, and he's doing much better. Are there still some challenges? Yes, but he's doing much better. And, Marley is in university here, and he goes to a school that is taught in English. It's international universities, which is fantastic. And one of the highlights of this past summer was Blake was in the US for the summer, and he called me, it must have been a few weeks. And then he said, Mom, I want to come home. Thank you, Jesus.
Portugal's home. Aww. That is amazing. And so it sounds like a lot of the transition to your life here has been not without, of course, like you said, challenges, but it's been relatively smooth. And so in addition to the move and moving with children, right, and navigating even the ages between the children and where they are in their life stages, you did a mammoth undertaking of a full gut reno of a home. As if you didn't have enough on your plate.
I know. Yes, I did. Sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, whoa, wait, what? My mind is like, what the hell did you do? And then there are days I'm like, oh, this is nothing. Like, bring it on, like. I purchased a over 100-year-old historical building in the historic center of Seixal. And a building meaning it has 5 different addresses, 5 different units, and renovated it. Many parts of it, I think more than about 50% of it was ruins. So had to do a whole gut reno for those, and about a 80% gut reno for the livable portion. So yeah.
How was that, like managing contractors, languages, cultural differences in terms of work ethic, right? Because you spent 30 years in the States. Yeah. It's a very different work ethic than being in Portugal, right? Which is a very laid back, we take our, siestas and all that thing, right?
And coffee breaks.
Yeah, many a coffee break, right? Because they want to get the bica and things like that. So how is it navigating that process?
The question I get asked is, did you think about like how it was going to go for construction in Portuguese, construction in a different country, and I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I think back and I ask myself, like, was I nervous? Was there something in my gut that was like, what are you doing? And I'm not going to lie to you, it wasn't. I don't know if I don't know, maybe I'm weird. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't feel any kind of hesitation.
You're fearless.
I guess I'm fearless. I was like, okay, well, I don't know all the steps. I don't need to know all the steps. I don't need to know what's going to happen next. I just know that everything is figure outable. Okay. Mm-hmm. To quote Marie Forleo, I just know that if I get to the next step and then the next step becomes visible and I just follow. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I have to take a chance on the life that I envision for myself. I have to take a chance and live the life that I want. And I have a quote to the right of me right now that I'm looking at on my whiteboard, and it says, work for the life you want to live. And that is all that I saw in front of me. I just knew it had to be done. If it doesn't work out, guess what? I can always go home. I got 2 other homes to go back to. I got a U.S. passport and a Jamaican passport. It's okay. I'm not a tree. I can move, right? Yeah. So I figure if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So the first time I saw this building, actually, with my realtor, I met a contractor who you have now come to know.
Yeah.
And he was working on some buildings on one of the back streets. And my realtor, who had met him on a couple of different occasions on that same street, said to him, do you want to just do a walkthrough with us? So just to kind of give, Nicole an idea of what's possible, what she can do. And he said yes. And we hit it off immediately. He is of Portuguese descent. Both parents are Portuguese, but he was born in South Africa, which means that there was no language barrier. A lot of people here in Portugal speak English, and there are a lot of English-speaking contractors, so there would be no language barrier per se. But for him, it was just like a natural fit into the course of what was happening. And I really liked him. Like in Jamaica, we use this saying, say that my spirit tech, like there's a spirit tech, like my spirit likes yours. And it just felt natural. And so I just went with a contractor who has an amazing work ethic, has an amazing team who is like family now. We sit down and have a beer occasionally. Work here is between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they show up at 8 a.m. and it's like 8 a.m. they're drilling. Okay. They come in at 7:55 and by 8 a.m. you better wake up or you will be woken up. Okay. They go to lunch at 12, between 12 and 1, like clockwork. And then they go for a coffee break between 3 and 3:30, like clockwork. To your point, they get their bika, and then they come back, and by 5 p.m. they're done, and they're walking out the door. Great work ethic, always there when you need them for something, very open to the design. What I like about my contractor is that he's very strong-willed in the sense that he is, very good at the detail. He's very good at, you can have this, but you can't have this. Very realistic. I love that, but also open to my ideas and finished on time. I would say the house is about 90% done right now. So it took a little bit over a year to get all the units completed, which is fantastic. And now I have rental units as well.
That is fantastic. I had last season, Penny and June, who who are in Seixal. I call you jokingly the unofficial mayor of Seixal. So for you, mayor, what is it about Seixal?
I think it's hilarious that I have gotten that name, the mayor of Seixal. At the very best, I'm the assistant mayor of Seixal. So love Penny and June. They like to credit me for their move to Seixal, but I think they deserve full credit for moving here. But they came here to see me, ended up moving here. When I was looking in 2021, I met my realtor, who at that time was a team leader. He eventually handed me over to one of his staff. But when I met this official team leader for this realty, he had lived in the United States and he had lived in Boston. And he's now he's back in Portugal. And so he understood at that time my love for New England, Jamaican at heart, grew up, spent most of my life in Boston, but I love New England, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. I love the Cape and the Islands, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. I am a New England girl as well. And for the rest of my life, no matter where I live in the world, I will always have a place in New England. And I still do. And so he said to me, Seixal, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, because it's a beach town, reminds him of Cape and the Islands, where it is people come for the weekend to get away from the city. There's a great marina life here, lots of boats in the bay, in the harbor, as you can see, it's right on the river. It has a beach, but it's a river beach, right? So has a nice little boardwalk, even though it's on a boardwalk, it's like a red brick road. But it's a nice walkable beach town, an old fishing village. People still are out there in the river. The fishermen are out there, not just fishing during the day and at night, but they are in the water in their wetsuit, digging for clams and other seafood And the moment I came here and I had lunch by the beach, I said, this is the place. Now, granted, I did look in some other places as well, like Alcochete and Stobal and Montijo. But I ended up knowing that Seixal was a place for me.
It's a dreamy place. I love going to visit you, and it has this special pull, especially in the historic center. It feels very Portuguese, very much like you greet your neighbor and they know you, and they also welcome you even if you aren't from that neighborhood, right?
Yes, they do. And that's the thing, is like you walk and you have to say bon dia. You say bon dia, boa tarde, boa noite, because everyone it's a community. It's a family, especially on the back streets, not so much on the water, but because the waterfront is just everybody, but on the back streets, because my building takes up 2 streets, right? So on the back street, especially, and you're familiar with it, you pass by, you say bon dia. I'll tell you a quick story, and if you have time for a quick story. When I first moved here, I would just walk around and just say bon dia to everybody, which is what you do. Mm-hmm. And I would see the ladies behind me, and I'd say, bon dia, senora. Oh, they'd be like, oh, bon dia, Donna Nicole, or Nicole sometimes. Bon dia, Donna Nicole. And I'm like, okay, bon dia. Months later, after walking around saying, bon dia, senora, I go into the little mercado next door. I was picking up some carrots. And I bring them to the checkout, and Donna Rosa, she teaches me, she's a shop owner. She teaches me Portuguese and I teach her English occasionally, right? So she goes, oh, senora. I'm like, no, carrot. She goes, senora. I'm like, no, carrot. She goes, carrots, senora. I'm like, carrots are senora?
I know, so I was listening to you like, oh, bom dia, carrot.
Exactly. There's a very distinct difference between senora and senora. So senora is ma'am, lady, miss. cenoura is carrots. So for months, I was walking through these streets saying, "One day of carrots, one day of carrots." So all the
Good
ladies,
morning, carrot. I'm like, she must love her vegetables.
They were too nice. They didn't say anything to me. Let me tell you, it was just the.
I love that story. That is so great. And there's so much like flavor, I think, as I look at your life and how it's been blossoming in your time. As we start to think ahead to the future, and you have a successful business, you've completed, your renovation for the most part, your kids are settling in, you are continuing to flower. What do you think the future holds, at least in the near term for you?
As of now, Portugal is it. It is home. Would I move to somewhere else in the world? Absolutely. I mean, people change, people evolve, right? Opportunities come along. But Portugal for me will always be home in the sense that I will always have a home here. It will be my base. Do I have plans to return to the United States? No, I don't. I will always hold a U.S. passport and I will, but I will, I don't think I'd ever live in the U.S. again. Again, never say never, but that is where I see myself at the moment. Now, my kids may in the future decide to move back to the United States, and that's okay. It's their life, it's their choice. I'm just here to guide them on the path based on where they are in their lives right now, to give them the best opportunity that I can, to give them a nice, safe space, to give them a space where they can think and feel safe and feel loved and welcomed into the world. And then when they graduate college or even before, they can decide what they want to do. They may decide to go back to the US for college, and that's okay too. But as for me, this is where my life is. If the US is a part of their lives, then I will be there back and forth. But for now, Portugal is home.
Wow, and that's a great way to end our beautiful conversation. Nicole, where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at Nicole Barrett. That is my personal page, but I also run the travel and lifestyle brand, which is the Saudade Life. And you can find me on Instagram there at the Saudade Life. And that is TheSaudadeLife.
Awesome. And I'll link all of that in the show notes for this episode. So, Nicole, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on the Blaxit Global Podcast. I love how the universe brought us together on this wonderful journey and chapter in our lives. I cherish our friendship and I look forward to making more memories with you in the future.
Igualmente. So do I. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your love. And thank you for building a wonderful community for each and every one of us.
Thank you for listening to the Blaxit Global Podcast. For more information on today's episode, be sure to visit our website at blaxitglobal.com. It's not only possible to live out your dreams unbothered and in full color, it is your birthright. This episode of the Blaxit Global Podcast is sponsored by Blaxit Global Passport. At some point, the question stops being, can I move abroad? And becomes, what's possible for my life? Passport is where Black women from around the world come together to explore new possibilities, navigate life abroad, and create lives that feel bigger than the ones they were told to settle for. Because the goal was never just to move. The goal is to expand what feels possible. Visit blaxitglobal.com and click community to begin your next chapter.